Hi, I'm Mehdi Sanaji, and welcome to Your Finance TV's Crypto Revolution, covering all things crypto and digital assets. We're back after an extended, or I guess extensive, 4th of July break with Adam Blumberg, co-founder at Interactions. Adam, how was your 4th of July?
4th of July was pretty good, Mehdi. All about freedom. That's what we like to celebrate here.
There
So
we
it was
go.
pretty good.
Freedom of life, freedom of money, freedom of everything. So that brings us wonderfully into our decentralized finance conversation today.
Of course it does. And the one thing to remember, Mehdi, even though we in the US celebrated Independence Day, July 4th yesterday, crypto didn't stop.
Crypto didn't stop. Very good point. But before we get into all the hot topics of the week, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to stay on top of our content. And as always, drop us a line if there are any topics you want us to explore in depth. So, Adam, first of all, there's been a decent move in Bitcoin over the last few weeks, and much of this has been attributed to BlackRock and their application for a spot ETF and others now. How's that all going? It feels like there was a bit of back and forth with the SEC, but we're still on track, right? And I think what Valkyrie, Wisdom Tree, Fidelity, everyone's kind of jumping on this bandwagon. Wagon.
Right. Everyone kind of took the language that BlackRock used. I think the assumption that you and I talked about last week is that BlackRock knows something. They've already kind of made a deal with the SEC because BlackRock isn't wading into this just hoping to get approved. I think they're pretty certain they're going to get approved. And so everyone just copied the language, which you can do because it's a public filing. So yeah, Valkyrie jumped back in, Bitwise, Wisdom Tree, ARK, just Fidelity, all of those jumped in with the idea of having their own ETF, which why wouldn't they? This will probably be the biggest ETF launch ever. So of course, everyone wants to get in on it. And it seems to be going well. You referenced there was a little back and forth. The SEC returned them all and basically said they were inadequate. And some of the inadequacies, as I understand it, again, not being a securities lawyer or anything, some of the inadequacies revolved around the exchanges they're going to use, and more importantly, the surveillance sharing agreements, which is something that SEC uses for spot ETFs based on some sort of commodity. So apparently, everyone has gone back to the SEC with their forms, with their application, and said, "Okay, we're going to." Use NASDAQ or use Coinbase or something for the SSA. And hopefully that will satisfy the SEC. Although I have a feeling that the SEC is going to find, some sentence where there's not a period and send it back saying it's inadequate.
So yeah, and on that surveillance side of things, it seems like Coinbase has been thrown in there as one of the exchanges of choice, and they saw a nice little uptick in their stock price as well over the last few days. I think they got downgraded today, but they are certainly off the lows. So keep an eye on that one as well.
Yeah, Coinbase is going to be part of this, of course, and just for a little background, Mehdi, the surveillance sharing agreement basically is the SEC has said, look, we need to find some way to know that their big worry is there could be manipulation or price fixing or something happening in the crypto markets. And so the idea of this ETF is saying something like BlackRock is going to use NASDAQ as its exchange. But the SEC has said, all right, we need you to have some agreement with some other exchange so that we can understand if there is some sort of manipulation, price manipulation going on. So this kind of surveillance sharing agreement says that, okay, even though BlackRock is going to use NASDAQ, they might be looking over at Coinbase to see if there is some manipulation going on, and there is going to be an agreement between the two that Coinbase is going to be monitoring as well. And if they detect something, they have to let BlackRock and NASDAQ know.
Perfect. So everyone's on the same page, right? We want to make sure that things are done correctly, things are compliant, there's no price manipulation, and this is, I'm sure, welcomed by BlackRock and the other applicants as well, to make sure that this is all buttoned down. No one's got any unsurveilled points of data, a la FTX. Yeah, it's all good. I'm sure.
It seems to be progressing, and it seems like the SEC came back again and said something is inadequate. BlackRock and everyone else went right back at them and said, "We got this." It seems like there's not a whole lot that they're leaving up to chance. They kind of have everything buttoned up, and like I said, either they know something, they've already made a deal, or they know what strings they need to pull to make sure that they can get this approved.
Well, we've also seen the likes of Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy start dipping away back into their Bitcoin holdings. They've been doing quite well. So it's nice to see a bit more action in that whole space. I think June was a big month on volume. So, yeah, it's all getting back in that vein of point of interest.
Right.
I don't know if you saw this. The CME group announced plans to launch an Ethereum and Bitcoin ratio futures ETF type
Right.
thing. Um, that's it hasn't been approved yet, though, right? I think it said that they've got a few weeks for before approval, but they're looking to launch by the end of the month. This could be kind of an interesting one, right?
Right. This could be interesting because what it is going to be an ETH BTC ratio, meaning it's not Bitcoin against the dollar or ETH against the dollar. It's ETH against Bitcoin. And we haven't really had a need for this in the past because they've kind of moved in tandem for the most part. But as we see, ETH would move, they were moved to proof of stake last year. As we see Bitcoin and the potential investment theses around something like an inflation hedge happening, what we might see is a decoupling of ETH from Bitcoin or ETH from BTC, and that's where the CME is saying, look, there's a place for this. People want to trade this, so we need to give the opportunity for these futures to trade. And interestingly enough, Mehdi, though, they're going to settle in dollars. So it's not that I'm going to trade these futures and settle up in ETH or Bitcoin. I'm going to have to settle up in dollars. So what it essentially ends up being is like a regulated gamble.
A regulated gamble. I'm sure they love hearing that.
Yeah.
But I also it's got a place for people who've been both involved in ETH and Bitcoin. It could work out as a good little hedge as well against your crypto portfolio if you are involved, in different degrees in those underlying asset holdings.
I could see it working for institutions, for ultra high net worth individuals, people who maybe have skewed their holdings further towards ETH or further towards Bitcoin, but they want to take advantage. Like the people who maybe have skewed more ETH, and say a Bitcoin spot ETF gets approved, they can hedge themselves and go, oh well, I still want to take advantage if the price of Bitcoin shoots up, doubles in a day or something when it gets approved, and they want to take advantage of that without selling all their ETH and moving over to Bitcoin. So I can see where this definitely has a place with institutions and with the kind of the high net worth, ultra high net worth crowd.
Yeah, no, I like it. One of the things that we discussed last week was the UK and them stepping up, trying to create some more regulatory structure around crypto and stable coins, and they put something into the House of Parliament. The bill was actually passed through the Parliament, and then it was signed off by King Charles himself on Thursday last week, I believe. So we now have a formal bill in the UK. So it's it's a
Yeah.
regulated financial activity.
Right. It basically gives the financial regulators the ability to go regulate it, right? I mean, that's all the bill says. It doesn't say, here's how it will be regulated, here's what a token is or anything else. It says the financial authorities there can start regulating crypto and stable coins. Again, signed off on by the king, but which I think is, just, I don't think that part really matters as much as it made it through both houses of parliament. And so now, crypto, DeFi, all of the stable coins are assets, commodities, whatever you want to call them. It's a system that can now be regulated by the financial authorities in the UK.
So you don't think the king actually read the whole bill?
I have a feeling he did not, but if he did, hey, more power to him. I know what else is the king going to do on July 4th? It's a worldwide holiday, right? I'm sure he was,
Exactly.
yeah, celebrating the fact that his great like sixth or seventh great grandfather or something lost the war.
Licking their wounds
Yeah.
on July the 4th. So back to Coinbase for a moment. There's been obviously they're wearing two hats, or they're in two different conversations regarding the SEC. There's one that now there's a suit against them by the SEC, but Coinbase now filed a motion to dismiss this suit, branding it as an extraordinary abuse of process. So they've got their boxing gloves on. They're really trying to put the SEC in their corner. How's all this progressing? Because it just seems to be like an ongoing story of just back and forth.
Um, yeah, Coinbase is playing a bunch of different roles now with the SEC. As you said, they're sued and they're just trying to get things dismissed. They're just trying to, it seems like, take little punches and little bites out of the SEC here and there. And this one is saying that the whole thing should be dismissed. And again, not a lawyer. I read some of this. Part of this is around the idea of the tokens that the SEC claims are securities without ever having proven that they are securities, right? They what, part of what Coinbase is saying is you're calling us an unlicensed exchange of securities, but you haven't proven what we're trading as securities yet. That's an abuse of power. You can't do that. On top of that, many of these tokens weren't even in other discussions the SEC has had with Coinbase, and all of a sudden they get lumped in with everything else. So I think there are a lot of problems that Coinbase has, and they're kind of saying the SEC is just doing this, kind of abusing their power until they get stopped, and we're going to be the ones to try to stop them.
Well, I don't know if you saw it on a Sunday. There was a little Twitter storm about how Gary Gensler was potentially being ousted from the SEC, and that got everyone all chatty across the board. But it turns out that it was not the case, and it was has since been refuted by the SEC. But it turns out, from what I understand, it was an AI generated story that actually put that out. So we'll see
Well,
what
I'm
if
look,
this news
it's
flow.
probably a good thing it was happening on a Sunday when there weren't quite as many people paying attention in a holiday weekend, because otherwise that could have gotten out of hand quite a bit. But I did see that floating around Twitter early Sunday morning, and went to go verify it. When you can't verify it with any kind of reputable sources, then you just kind of dismiss it. And I think that's what we're going to do with AI in the future. I think it's going to be a lot of something has to be verified with reputable sources. And honestly, like, not to go down this road, but this is where a lot of people in the crypto world have said, this is how we're going to prove our identity, such that I can prove that I'm not AI, that I'm not some sort of computer generated stories or computer generated language, that I'm going to use the blockchain system to verify who I am, such that I can actually, submit or write stories like that.
Because all this is going to get harder and harder as AI
Yeah.
dives deeper and deeper into our worlds. So let's take a little pivot away from regulation here onto something a bit more exciting. An application, right? So this is actually, I think this is one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. Car sharing service, tokenizing Teslas to share revenue. Run us through this, because this is really cool on a multitude of different levels, from the user experience to participate both from an investment side, from a user side, from um, generating capital returns to discounts,
Yep.
tokenization. Like it's just on
It's
every single part. It's a very, very cool use case. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
take,
No, no, no.
take away from your breakdown of it all.
No, I appreciate it. So there's a company called Eloop, which is in Europe, and they basically tokenized. They're a car sharing service, so not ride sharing like Uber, but more car sharing. Like, I'm a member, I can use any one of their cars, in anytime I need to. For the most part, if it's available, I can go use that. I mean, here in Denver, we have those scooters everywhere that I can go pick up and use. So this is doing the same thing with a car. And the way I kind of get membership, the way I kind of get into this is I buy in and I buy some of their tokens, and I have a token that represents my ownership or my investment or membership in Eloop. So they've tokenized all the cars. They know where they are at all times, right? Because they're also using GPS, such that I'm going to have an app, and within the app, I'm going to know how many times I can share the car, how many times I can use the car. I'm using their native token to get rewarded based on revenues of the company, and I can use some of those rewards to actually drive the car, right? Because based on the number of tokens I have, that's how many hours or miles or whatever metric they're using, I guess kilometers, I can drive their cars. So yeah, car sharing service, tokenizing the cars, using their native token to determine kind of my points, how much I can utilize of the car service. And quite honestly, I could invest in this by owning some of the tokens, or owning some of the tokens that represent ownership or membership, and participate in the revenue of the company without ever having to use the car sharing service, right? So I think it's a great use case for blockchain technology. I don't think it's going too far into blockchain. I don't think it's crypto for crypto's sake. I think it makes more sense in terms of being able to track everything, more sense and more people, I guess, around the world being able to participate. They've kind of locked down a lot of the tokens to where I can't just trade them to you just because on any sort of exchange. You have to be whitelisted. So they seem to have taken care of a lot of that, Mehdi. So this is a pretty exciting use case, to be honest.
Oh, I'm excited to see it, and maybe we'll see the likes like the Zip car over here kind of pop
Yeah.
back up and rear their head and see if they start adopting some of this technology.
You know, what's interesting about this, Mehdi, is kind of in my early days of learning about crypto, about, DeFi and DAOs and everything in 2017, 2018. Some of those that were early into it had these theories around DAOs, and a lot of these theories always went back to like a fleet of self-driving cars, right? Which we're not that far off from, but a fleet of self-driving cars operated by a DAO, and the cars would know when they have to go be charged. You'd be able to summon them kind of like you do in Uber, and you'd be able to buy into membership using tokens. And here we are. It seems like we're not that far away from that, what kind of what that vision was. But the idea was they'd write the code such that the company could kind of run itself almost. The cars could kind of run themselves. They would know when they need service. Of course, a Tesla knows exactly when it needs service. It can contact home and say, hey, help me. Here's what I need. They're getting closer and closer to being able to drive themselves. So I don't think we're horribly far off from those kind of early crypto people's vision of what a self-driving automobile DAO might be.
It's all pretty cool, and it is rolling in that right general direction.
Yeah.
Listen, it's cool.
Stephen King is ready, right? Stephen King's just ready to write the book right now.
I know, and it's kind of like part of me is like, this is so awesome how it's all coming together, and then the other part of me is like, oh, it's a little bit scary that it's all coming together.
You're right. It's a little bit scary. I mean, if you don't think this reminds you of a Stephen King movie, then you haven't seen many Stephen King movies, because this is, Christine and I forget the other one with the cars that try to kill everyone, but it seems like he's got to be ready for this.
Oh yeah, this is definitely going to come out with some interesting headlines. And lastly, Sotheby's, our old friends, are back in the news. They launched a program working with art blocks, and they hosted their first Dutch auction. This is again another utilization of blockchain, which seems like a good use case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Sotheby's has kind of been on the forefront of this, right? Which I like, because this is Sotheby's going, look, we're not going to be so stuck in our ways that we say art is only what we've deemed art in the past. They're going, art is whatever people deem as art, whatever they decide is art, and we want to be there for whatever they want to pay for it, right? However they want to pay, we want to be that auction house of choice. So this is where they're working with art blocks. By the way, some of these auctions are being conducted in their metaverse location. So you have to, be in the metaverse and be participating in some of these auctions. They're working with art blocks to work with some of the generative artists, and the generative artists, or the generative art, is the art that utilizes blockchain technology to kind of create the work, right? It's not me sitting down with paints or watercolors or sketching or something like that. It's utilizing programs to build the art. So the art is in how you write the code and how you utilize the blockchain technology to see what you'll come up with. And again, Sotheby's looking forward and going, this is what people see as art right now. We want to be there for it. They went with a Dutch auction, which is how Art Blocks has traditionally worked, which is, again, Sotheby's going, we're going to go to, on the financial side, the way of price discovery that this new breed of art investors is going with. And a Dutch auction, of course, is, instead of starting at the bottom and working your way up in price, you start at the top and work your way down, right? So they might start with a price of $1 million, and the auctioneer starts working down until someone bids on it, and whoever bids on it gets it for whatever that price is. So it's a completely different price discovery model than what we're used to. And Sotheby's is going, as long as we're going to move forward with this new breed of digital art, we're going to move forward with a new way of price discovery, figuring out what someone's willing to pay for it.
Listen, the NFT market has had a tough couple of months. it's nice to bring a fresh kind of perspective on things and see how things pan out.
Exactly. And yeah, this is one of those things I like seeing it. It's not crypto for crypto's sake or blockchain for blockchain's sake. It's going, this is from a cultural perspective where we think it's going, and we're going to embrace it and go to where the people want to be and not be all stuck in our ways, kind of like we've seen from the traditional finance system.
Well, definitely something to watch out for.
Yep.
Adam, I feel like the next several weeks and months are going to be very interesting to see how things pan out on the SEC front. But
Seems that way.
Sorry?
It seems that way.
It does seem that way. So I would definitely urge our viewers to stay tuned. And of course, while you're here, check out Adam's course on digital assets and crypto education. It's a company called Interact. It's just above his head there. And don't forget to subscribe to Your Finance TV. Get it done. We'll be back next week with more about crypto revolution. Until next time, good luck investing.